The rookie class for the Cincinnati Bengals is playing with the veterans in practices this week for the first time. Which rookie will have the biggest impact in 2023? Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You can subscribe to this show on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast. Become an everydayer. Get all the great interviews we've had on this podcast lately and we'll have in the future. And you can become part of that first listen club, making us your first listen every day. As today we're going to break in and dive into, the most impactful rookie. At least we're going to predict it in the 2023 season. I also want to talk about maybe, James, the rookies that we're hoping don't have to make an impact this season. That's a corollary to the most impactful rookie. Before we get there, Ja'Marr Chase in town with those rookies getting their first day of practice with the veterans on Monday. Ja'Marr Chase reportedly also in the building. Bengals social media team planning to do some Ja'Marr Chase content, apparently, James. What do you think?
Yeah. I love that he's back. I love that he's in town, and it's just another step. Heck, he can learn a thing or two from old man Charlie Jones, who's older than Ja'Marr Chase. Kidding there, but it is kind of funny to think about. Like T. Higgins, he's older than T as well. But no, it's cool to have Ja'Marr Chase in town, and hopefully we'll get an in-depth look at him during OTAs. And it's weird because is it minicamp, is it OTAs? These are still OTAs. They're going into the second phase this week of their organized team activities, training activities here in town. So it's good to have him back, though, no doubt. Anytime Ja'Marr Chase is in the building, you can't help but smile because he's been great over the past two seasons.
You know, I don't have birth dates for all of the college free agent wide receivers, Mac Hippenhammer and Malachi Carter. I can't find birth dates for, but I believe Ja'Marr Chase is still the youngest wide receiver on the team. He's younger than Yossi Vash as well. The only wide receiver, I believe, on the team born in the 2000s as a decade. Mm-hmm. So
he just turned 21 or 23, excuse me, in March.
Yeah. And the rest of the guys on the team, I think, were 99, 98 birthdays, whereas Jamar's a 2000 birthday. There's a fun fact.
He's a freak.
Still the youngest and best wide receiver on the roster.
He was 19, putting the LSU on his back, and then comes into the league and can barely get into a bar and is able to do what he did as a rookie. And then obviously last year put up huge numbers despite being injured. So expectations high for him, expectations kind of high for this rookie class, but in a different way. There's no 5th overall pick. You know, the 28th pick in each round makes it tougher. I'll say that to land a Ja'Marr Chase type impact guy. Not that there was any of those guys really in this draft, certainly at receiver. That said, you mentioned it, rookies that are going to make the biggest impact, and we will get to ones that you hope don't make a huge impact necessarily, because that could mean bad things for the guys in front of them. But let's start with the guys that could make a huge impact and really help this team this year. Who are you looking at? Who do you have your eye on the most, Jake?
Well, who I'm hoping for is first round pick Myles Murphy. That's the best case scenario. The best case scenario, and I know they have a lot of depth at end, and we've talked about that, and that was one of the things we said going into the draft that was like, well, why would they take an edge rusher unless it's overwhelming value, which the Bengals feel like they got in Myles Murphy because they have 4 guys in this rotation already that they feel good about. But what you're hoping for is that Myles Murphy comes in and all that promise, all those tools, all that athleticism, all those flashes become something that, maybe by week 6, week 7 are really consistent. And he's forcing his way onto the field because of how disruptive he is on a consistent basis, how solid he is as a run defender as well, which is obviously something this team is going to care about and something that he should come in relatively good at from a skill set perspective. It looks like that's something that should be a pretty smooth transition for him. So if he comes in and has, quickly developed a pass rush plan, has a few more counter moves, a few more secondary moves in his game, has figured out how to hit some of those moves more consistently and affect the quarterback more consistently, and he's forcing his way onto the field. That is like a best case scenario to me with the first round pick, the premium pick of the premium position. That's what you're hoping, I would say, is the biggest impact. Is it what I think will be the biggest impact? I think he has the biggest opportunity just by the nature of being a first round pick, but I'm not sure if that's my pick for having the most impact just right off the bat.
If let's say every pick works out as a rookie and they contribute on their respective sides of the ball, not just special teams, and you mentioned it, the value, he will have the biggest impact. So in a perfect world, you're right. I think getting after the quarterback and doing that is going to be as valuable as what any of these players can do, any of the 8 can do this year as a rookie realistically. So I agree there. I do wonder though, because it's wild to think about. I don't think it's Drago, by the way, not Drago, but I don't think it's Drago Turner. At least that's how he said it when he talked with Dan Horde. I don't think it's Drago Turner, DJ Turner, for those wondering, DJ Turner the second. But obviously a premium position. Round 3, I think Jordan Battle. You might pick Jordan Battle if I had to guess. I'm not saying that you will. I'm just, if I had to guess, if I had to put FanDuel odds on it, that would probably be one that I'd wager on for Jake Lisco. But I almost think their day 3 guys are going to have a huge impact and right away. And whether it's some special teams for Charlie Jones as a returner, or the fact that they use 3 receivers all the time, and that if one of them gets nicked up, I think Jones is going to be the first receiver off the bench in a lot of scenarios. And it's not just him. Chase Brown, who's their RB2? I think Brown's going to be in the mix there, assuming he's the type of runner that they feel he is. And then Brad Robbins. I mean, those are 3 guys that could have significant roles right away and a significant impact. So go ahead, give me yours, and it might be one of those 3. But those are the 3 guys, as weird as it sounds, day 3 picks that I could see making the most impact, at least early on this season.
Depends on how you want to define impact. That's another thing that we didn't really talk about before we started this discussion. Because if you want to talk about impact as like how much do they impact the football game, it might be a different answer than impact as far as how do they impact their position. Because if it's how do they impact their position, Brad Robbins is going to be the punter this year.
Sure.
Barring something crazy. And then I would say it's Brad Robbins because that is a wholesale change at the punter position. Whereas when you talk about any of these other guys the Bengals drafted this year, you're talking about them being rotational contributors. Chase Brown, Charlie Jones, Myles Murphy, Juan Drago Turner, Jordan Battle, Drago Turner, DJ Turner, whatever we're calling him. I think we have to figure that out.
All of the above.
For all those guys, you're talking about rotational. They're going to be on the field in sub packages kind of thing. And then I think I still go back to Myles Murphy. Maybe he is my pick. Charlie Jones is a good one too. And when you were talking about Charlie Jones, I started thinking about 6-man in basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Fourth guy at wide receiver, most similar position in the NFL to 6-man in basketball. Maybe nickel corner is the other one because they're not always on the field, although these days they pretty much are. Those are the 2 that spring to mind. Just trying to make some cross-sport comparisons there.
Yeah, with me, I think it is Charlie Jones. I think the most impact. Now, I hope it's Myles Murphy, because if so, it changes things. It changes this defense, and it makes this defense that much tougher. If you say you hope it's DJ Turner, well, that means potential injury and all of those things. I don't want to deal with that. And I want Cheeto to have the best year of his career coming off of that ACL. And obviously you want Cam Taylor-Britt to take a step forward. So that's hard to see. Jordan Battle, you could get behind it, but then what does that mean? That Nick Scott's the 3rd safety? That Dax Hill is the 3rd safety as a second-year first rounder? I don't see that happening, and I don't think that would be ideal. So looking at it and looking at this offense and looking at what they're sort of missing, they have 1 pass-catching tight end, 1 guy I think that they can rely on to catch passes. I think there's a lot of ways where if Charlie Jones is the guy. I think he's going to be this week when Joe Burrow meets him in person, and already has by the time you hear this recording, that he could have the biggest impact. Let's continue this discussion though, Jake, because I still think there's a little bit more here on these rookies, this rookie class, and the impact they could have. We'll do that coming up next. But today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is here at the perfect time because the NBA playoffs, the Western Conference Finals, well, they get underway on Tuesday night. It's Lakers. They took down my Steph Curry in the Warriors. And I say my Steph Curry because I'm a huge Steph fan. But if you think LeBron is on his way to ring number 5, well, you can wager on the Lakers to handle business, or maybe you're going the other way and you think that the Joker, the back-to-back MVP prior to this year, and some thought he should win it 3 straight years, but that they're going to get their first ring with the Denver Nuggets, or at least get to the NBA Finals. You can wager on that. You can do same game parlays with different prop bets, and everyone's overlooking the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. I actually like them in game 1. That prediction, sure to be wrong, but the point is you can wager on all of those things by going to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon to get a no sweat first bet. That's free money. FanDuel.com/lockedon.
More to talk about with these rookies and impact they're going to make, who you want to make an impact. And like you said, and like I said, I think it's hard to make a super strong case for any of these guys given the veterans on this team. Like, do I hope Charlie Jones makes a huge impact as a rookie? On special teams, yes. As a wide receiver, probably not, right? Same reason that I hope we don't have to see a ton of DJ Turner, because you hope that Cheeto's healthy. You hope that Cam Taylor-Britt continues to be the guy. Jordan Battle, though, is an interesting one in terms of hope. Like, is it a big deal?
Did I nail it? Keep going.
No, but I think I've given my answer. Like Myles Murphy, Brad Robbins, Charlie Jones. I think Brad Robbins, in terms of like in a vacuum, ignoring football, like what's important, right? Because he's going to be your punter, and that's a huge difference to me. But you're talking about Charlie Jones as a special teams impact. Brad Robbins is a special teams impact. Myles Murphy is a rotational piece. DJ Turner is the first corner off the bench. Charlie Jones, first corner off the bench. When you're talking about defensive, offensive stuff. Yeah. First receiver off the bench.
Yep.
So then when you look at Jordan Battle, when you were talking about, if he's playing a lot, Nick Scott's, safety 3, is that such a bad thing though? If Nick Scott ends up being a third safety, he started for 1 year in the NFL, and when they signed him, and I still think this, they signed him to be starting safety, a starting free safety in particular, deep safety. But they're not paying him a ton. Like if he ends up being the third guy, the guy that actually, it's not going to be Jordan Battle coming on the field in the sub packages. We're actually going to bring Nick Scott on the field in sub packages to free up Dax Hill.
Sure.
To let Dax Hill move around. That wouldn't be the worst thing.
No.
If that happens in like week 6 or week 7 or something, like maybe after the bye when they feel really comfortable with Battle.
No, I agree with that. I think it would be the other way. I think some would be like, oh, well, Nick Scott can play that deep safety role and Jordan Battle can be Von Bell. And Dax Hill is just this guy who's on the field for 30% of the snaps as a third safety.
No. Do we need some Dax Hill myth busting, James?
I'm just making sure. I'm just making sure that no one goes that route, because of the 3 guys, for always, Dax Hill has been ranked. Going back to high school, he was ahead of Jordan Battle. He was obviously a higher ranked prospect. I think he would have been the number 1 safety in this year's draft class had he stayed and came out with DJ Turner, just to give you an example. And so, yeah, I think he's ready to go. I think he's going to make a big impact. I know he's on the Built Bar plan. And so I want to make sure people don't fall in love with Jordan Battle so much that they think that Dax Hill, a guy who didn't get on the field much last year, so we kind of forget, is going to be a huge part of this defense.
Yeah, I hope that I was clear. I'm talking Nick Scott. I guess I was clear. Like Nick Scott would be.
No, you were.
Okay.
I just want to be clear on my end. about Dax.
Is he actually on the Built Bar plan? I know you've had a chance to talk to him probably in the locker room.
I hope so. He looks like it, man. I'm telling you. Ooh, walking around like
1 year in the. I mean, he was the young guy last year, right? He's another late 2000s, maybe turns 23 in September. He has a chance to work into that NFL body this year.
Yeah, he would he have been the youngest guy outside of Myles Murphy in this class for the Bengals?
Yes.
Might have been. He might have been.
DJ Turner.
It's close.
DJ Turner's a little bit younger.
Okay. Same class.
A month younger. Yeah.
It's just Dax came out a year early. Yep.
Yeah. As far as guys, that you don't want to have to make a big impact this year, I would still say Charlie Jones on offense. You hope he doesn't have to, but he will. They rotate receivers. A fourth receiver gets snaps. He will get snaps.
And that's the part. You hope the three stay healthy.
Yeah.
And then, yes.
And also you wonder, like Trenton Irwin, they love him. Jones will have to do a little bit early on to beat out Trenton Irwin, I think.
For sure.
Like he's going to have to win it, right? It's not going to just be handed to him. He's a 4th round pick, not a 2nd round pick, but he has every opportunity, I think, to win those snaps. But Irwin's still going to see the field a bit, especially how much last year did we talk about how much Joe Burrow trusts Trenton Irwin? And we saw that play out time and time again on the field where he was very comfortable throwing to Trent Irwin in a variety of situations. And then the other guy you hope doesn't have to make an impact, I talked about it, DJ Turner, because you want those top 3 guys to be on the field as much as possible. But again, the luxury to have DJ Turner and Charlie Jones as your first guys off the bench at their respective positions is on paper right now in May, a pretty big upgrade to their first guy off the bench at those positions going into the year last year.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess Cam Taylor-Britt was not too dissimilar to DJ Turner, but compared to the starters, then your top 4 corners overall are better.
Yeah, I was just thinking, are we missing the boat here a little bit on instant impact? Are we sure it's not Chase Brown, like as the clear cut guy that's going to make an impact right away? Like we know Mixon is going to max out. Let's say he's on the roster. Let's just assume, right? Which we don't necessarily need to do. This isn't a Joe Mixon topic, I guess is the point. 60% of the snaps, max, he's going to be on the field for at max.
But then isn't he Chase Brown? He probably splitting that a little bit with Travion Williams.
Sure. But how is that split? Because Mixon might not be 60 for Mixon. What if it's 45?
Yeah. And what if it's like 20 for Travion? Like I'm thinking in the world of like 20, 25% for Chase Brown.
Okay. But
20 to 30 probably.
That might be the most offensive or defensive snaps. Well, I guess outside of Murphy. Murphy would be the one, I guess, that you would hope would flash.
Yeah, you hope Murphy's playing like 600 snaps this year, 500 snaps this year somehow.
Yeah. But
that's
a
pretty big number. But
the Chase Brown one is sneaky. It's not like he can't carry that load.
Yeah, how many snaps did Samaje Perine play last year? Let's find out. Perine played 556 snaps last year.
There you
to
go.
Joe Mixon 713. So that was like much closer to a 50-50 thing. And I don't think Chase Brown is stepping into the Samaje Perine role because Samaje Perine was out there for a ton of passing down snaps.
And there was 3 games where Mixon was out.
Yeah.
Mixon was injured.
But if Mixon's out, then Chase Brown's getting a lot of snaps in those games for sure.
Yeah. Then he's RB1, I would say, from a running standpoint. And then you would use Travion as that pass blocking back. It's interesting because I could still see them adding at that spot. So will Brown have an impact? I'm not sure, but I see the path to it.
Yeah.
And so it's good to have depth, Jake. I'll say that.
And for Myles Murphy, I said 500 snaps. That was probably a little bit high. Maybe 400 is more accurate just looking at the depth chart last year. But you want to get Sam Hubbard more rest. You want to get Trey Hendrickson more rest. Those guys had, including the playoffs, 962 and 732 snaps respectively. Cam Sample, 480, including the playoffs. Joseph Osai, 418, including the playoffs. So those snaps primarily, I would assume, are coming from Hubbard and Hendrickson. Keep those guys fresher. And it also means that you have 5 edge guys active much more often. The next highest snaps for an edge rusher last year outside of those top 4, and this is where we talked about what's the path to get on the field for an edge rusher for this team. was Jeff Gunter at 37, which is nothing. He only played in 4 games and he got hurt.
Yeah, not many snaps there. So I think they know they have to give some relief to Hubbard and Hendrickson. And those guys need to know it too. I think that's the other part of this. I know I was talking to DJ Reader, and he'll willingly take himself off the field to keep himself fresh during drives. Those guys, they don't think that way, which I think is crazy in one way, but it's also something they're going to have to learn, especially with a guy like Myles Murphy in town. Up next, Black Friday and the Bengals. We'll discuss it.
We are going to talk about the Bengals pitch to make Black Friday a tradition, the way that Thanksgiving games are a tradition for certain teams in the NFL, some of which are exciting, some of which are not. But tradition is tradition. Before we do that, one last point on the Myles Murphy getting on the field conversation I wanted to hit really quick. The other place that could come from, obviously, is guys kicking in to the interior, or Myles Murphy even playing on the interior, where BJ Hill had a ludicrous 977 snaps last year. I mean, BJ Hill playing on the defensive interior outsnapped Sam Hubbard playing on the edge. That's crazy. That's an insane ask for a 3-tech for any defensive interior player. So that's another place where they need to find their best.
Get that rear end inside a little bit.
Well, that's another guy you want to save some snaps for, right? So that's where you have those 5 edge guys active. That's how you get 5 edge guys active, is Cam Sample, Joseph Osai, and Myles Murphy, and Sam Hubbard. Maybe they're all comfortable playing a little bit of 4-eye 3 technique in different situations.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, let's get to the Black Friday extravaganza. That wasn't. It was about to be a tradition, and at least in the Bengals' eyes, they were hoping to. Read the quote here. I know you have it up about the Bengals pitch for Black Friday football in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm on allbengals.com here, James, reading this quote that a guy named, looks like James Rapien published. Is that somebody you know?
I've heard of him.
Yeah. So the Cincinnati Bengals raised their hand and volunteered and said, we'd be happy to host the first Black Friday game. In fact, we'd be happy to make this a tradition. How about Black Friday in Cincinnati every year? It's something that they're going to explore in the future. This is Mike North, the NFL Vice President of Broadcast Planning. He finished this part of the quote saying, I'm sure that'll be something we explore going forward. Now, I'm not sure if it would be in Cincinnati every year. I don't think you can just say, we're going to put every Black Friday game, which will be a primetime style game, right? Like, it'll be an event. It'll be broadcast as an primetime style game, the way that the Thanksgiving games are. Wouldn't probably be in Cincinnati every year, but it'd be cool for the Bengals to have that Cowboys, Lions, Commanders, what other teams play on Thanksgiving? That kind of tradition for the Joe Burrow era to be born out of the Joe Burrow era. That'd be a pretty cool thing.
I think that was the Bengals pitch, though, is let's have it here always. It's Black Friday. We're willing to. And that is pretty cool. I get why they didn't go with it, especially if they had landed on Bengals Steelers. This might make some Bengals fans angry. I think Dolphins Jets is just as interesting as Bengals Steelers. A lot of that has to do with the Steelers as it does anything. But from an interest standpoint, it's probably more, right? Assuming health, and I guess you shouldn't do that. But there's a lot of storylines that go into that Jets-Dolphins game. And from Aaron Rodgers on down, right? And you could look at both sides of it. I don't know if I think the Steelers might surprise some people, but I don't know if they're that interesting. They have a big fan base. You could argue that. I don't think they're that interesting, though. The Bengals are obviously interesting. Must see, all of those things. So it's not really a Bengals decision in my mind. I think they might have looked at it and said, the Steelers fit here. And it just doesn't make sense, which I'm fine with because they're not playing on Thanksgiving, which I will certainly take.
There's 2 huge media markets there with the Jets and Dolphins too, Miami and New York, some of the larger media markets. Well, why are you focused on the Steelers? Just because that's who they play that week? Is that the thought there?
Yeah. And so the schedule makers might have said, all right, well, this is how it lines up. Do we prefer Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, or New York, Miami? Like, it might have come down to that.
If it was going to be a tradition kind of thing where you're going to try to fit in different rivalry games for the Bengals on a rotational basis, because it's not always the same teams playing each other, right? Like they kind of
No.
mix it up every year. The Bengals have played on Thanksgiving before, obviously.
It's the Jets.
Oh yeah.
It was a fun one.
The Ravens Bengals, would be a pretty
great.
strong competitive game, from that perspective in terms of another division rivalry. I probably would guess that the schedule makers wouldn't want to put the Bills or the Chiefs in that game, at least until they know that it's going to be a very hotly watched game. And I don't know who's going to have the broadcast. Is it going to be an Amazon broadcast? Do we know?
I would have to look. I forget, but
yeah, I'm not sure.
It's either that or NBC. One of the two. Either way,
So there's probably the reason I bring it up is because there's probably some fighting over who gets the game, and it is on Prime. So it's probably the networks fighting to keep like the Bengals Chiefs, for example, instead of putting Bengals Chiefs in that spot, is what I'm saying. Like,
sure,
you want to make it a really good game. The Bengals are going to be playing the Chiefs or the Bills or both in a lot of years because of the way the schedules work, playing other first place teams. So you would have some pretty good games to pick from if you did want to make it a tradition, is what I was getting at.
Sure. No doubt about it. And who knows? Maybe they will moving forward, after this year. And depending on how the Black Friday goes. At the same time, if I'm the league, I don't know if I would pick any team.
Yeah.
Ever. Including the Lions, by the way. And I know they've done it, and it's a tradition. Does that always work? Cowboys, I get it. There's Cowboys fans all over the country, so it probably does work. But the Lions, there's been a lot of lean years. So I don't know if I would hitch my wagon to any single team because you just never know.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, it probably falls on its face, right? The way the NFL goes. But that's the other part about it just being a tradition in general is it is something that people stay locked into over the years. While we're on the topic of the schedule, one other thing we didn't hit in that schedule reaction episode, James, because we were so focused on the Bengals schedule at the time, the decision makers about primetime games with the NFL need to do better. And I don't know if I need to expand on that or not, but the Bengals getting 4 primetime games and some of the teams ahead of them getting more primetime games despite the quality of those teams. The Bengals perform really well when they're on TV. I went back and looked at the ratings for last year. The Chargers, I think, had better ratings than the Bengals in like one game last year when I compared it. So giving the Chargers 6, I know you have a big market in LA, but nobody cares about the Chargers in LA. And they don't draw the way the Bengals did last year. That's a big head scratcher for me. But we'll see how things go over the course of the year and the various flex opportunities and that sort of thing.
I was surprised by 4 primetime. There's no doubt. And essentially 5 if you count that December 23rd game, because that is going to be NBC, all of those things. And they're going. Odds are they'll flex 1 or maybe 2, and they'll be able to up it. That said, I agree with you, but me personally, not mad. 6 1 o'clocks, a lot of them at home. Heck yeah. No Christmas Eve, no Christmas Day. Heck yeah. New Year's Eve, that's fine. I can spend that in Kansas City. So me selfishly, the 1 o'clock starts at home are pretty nice. So I'm not angry at all. The road Thursday night game is unique for the past couple of years. The Thursday night game has been at home. So now I'm trying to figure out the travel for a Thursday game. It does make it interesting, right? We haven't had to deal with that. So that's one thing upon further review that has stood out too. Is like, okay, all right, when am I going to leave? When am I going to try to get into town for a Thursday game? Do you try to go in Thursday morning? Do you try to get back Friday? Do you try to go Wednesday and then just come back Friday morning? It's going to be interesting.
I know what I would do, but you'll figure it out for yourself. I know you will. You always do. Yeah, from a media perspective, you're never complaining about primetime games. But from like a quality of team, ego about team perspective, that's the perspective I'm representing there. But
ideally, if I can get in on Thursday and out Friday, that's what I would love to do. Yeah, but it's risky to fly on game day.
I guess, yeah. What time of year is it? It's October, early November.
You just never know. You just
Yeah.
never know. I got delayed going to Baltimore last year on the way to New Orleans and almost missed that connecting flight to New Orleans.
Oh yeah, because Cincinnati doesn't like they've lost so many direct flights too.
There's direct flights to Baltimore,
Oh, okay.
but if it gets, I haven't gotten that far.
Yeah,
That's all.
just book the first one of the day, the 6 a.m.
That's
Have plenty of opportunities to get there.
Oh, yeah.
I used to have to do that flying out of Cincinnati. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Plenty to come this week, including Joe Burrow meeting with the media, we believe, on Tuesday. So we should have some fun stuff to talk about there. First time hearing from the Bengals quarterback in quite a while. Until next time, Bengals fans, hoo day and have a good one.